item, which is a commercial acquisition. And of course, this needs to be commercial, because it's commercial, it's clearly in confidence. It's a transaction which hasn't happened that we're being asked to agree, and there are confidential papers here which relate to that transaction. But suffice to say, this follows on our policy of recognising the fact that we receive very low rates of interest for our investments in property, for our investments in savings that we have in the council. So money in the bank earns, as it does for everybody, very, very little. So what we have had a practice of doing over a number of years now, since interest rates crashed, is to invest in commercial property. Because by doing so, what we achieve is a far better rate of return for a very low risk, because of course the money is, if we need the money back, we sell the property, but it does tend to have a rate of return of between about 7 and 8%, whereas if we leave the money languishing in the bank, it's far less. And of course, where we need to borrow to finance, then we need to make sure again that those rates of return are significantly more than we would get by leaving money in the bank, or indeed not borrowing at all. And of course, borrowing rates are at a historic low as well at the moment. So it does make very sound commercial sense to us as a local authority, now that we can no longer rely on returns from our savings and reserves to utilise them, and it makes very good sense for us to borrow to finance commercial property acquisitions, provided we have very good covenants in terms of tenants on those properties. And of course the commercial lease is like ownership in all but name, so we don't have to go and visit these properties, so it doesn't matter where they actually are. But I can advise members that the result of this particular acquisition would mean that in value terms a significant majority of our commercial property will actually be within the borough of Fareham, which it doesn't really matter where the property is, because I say we don't need to physically look after it, but I think it is notable that by value a significant majority of it will actually be within this borough. So if anyone wants to discuss any of the commercial terms, of course we would need to do that in private session, but having read them, if members are happy to proceed, have you got any comments or questions they wish to make? Councillor Evans.
I'll have a comment, and we'll be careful in terms of what I refer to. But no, I see this essentially as a good coordination with a good basic policy. It's investment which is going to give us a positive annual return. And in terms of acquiring property. And I guess some will say, well, it can go up and down, can't it? And what happens to the value of our assets if their value goes down and rates start changing? But of course, if we look at the particular acquisitions we're looking at here, if you take that whole stretch, commercial stretch, over the, I guess it's been there now for 25, 30 years, something along those lines. Tenants have come and gone over the years, but it's always been tenanted, even in bad financial times. So it just seems to me this is good, positive continuation of that policy to invest.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so is that recommendation agreed? Just a question, if I may, then, for Andy Wannell, in terms of when we will be able to make this public, when would we expect the completion to happen and for us to be able to make the terms public?
Chairman, we wouldn't be able to complete the acquisition until after the calling period, but the vendor is keen to move quickly. So we're still in discussions about the final detail of the terms, but we would be hoping to complete towards the end of the month, which would be their design timeline, at which point then it can be open, because the transaction will then become open as it features on the land registry documents.
All right, thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting.